Just looking at me. Well, I think what staff was thinking today is to get input from you all about what you would like to include in the program, and then we'll bring something back.
I did find an article that studied similar programs, but it's very interactive, so it prints out and it's not as good. And I'll email that to you for your information. But
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little confused about this one because the system's already free.
Yeah, but this is the one, remember when we talked about it at retreat, where they could go back home if they wanted to go home?
That one, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yes.
I was thinking bus pass.
So I will tell
That
you
one,
what
okay. Yeah,
I'll tell
yeah,
you
yeah,
what my
yeah.
idea is, and this is not a big. It would not have to be a big scope, or I don't think it would be a big budget. I mean, that's the things that we'd have to say. Hey, here's the funding source. Who would execute this? How would we do it? But the
Yeah.
overview is basically just identify some of these people that are here that do have a support system somewhere else. Because like I did some research on this, and I'm sure in her article, I don't know, did you have any takeaways from that article, good or bad? Because I be honest, I found both good and bad when I looked. But some of them were super positive though too.
yeah, and the article talks about, they looked at 16 different cities and their programs. Only one of those cities, somewhere in Florida, would ban them from
Key West.
from being able to come back and get into the shelter and things like that. They had some success stories and some stories that weren't so successful, but basically they would call and verify in the destination city that there was an existing support system or somewhere for them to stay prior to putting them on the bus and sending them there. Everyone seemed to agree this is not a program to just simply make you go be
Yes.
homeless somewhere else.
Right.
And so that was useful.
Yeah, it's not just relocating and getting off the bus and say, hey, good luck.
Right.
But my idea with this was that, and that comes to how you staffing this. Are we putting this on an existing maybe partner and we fund them to be able to execute this? And what I don't want it to be is a draw for people to come here from elsewhere to say, oh, I'm just going to Norman just to hit that program. But that's probably going to be, might be some inevitability that might happen. But my idea literally was seriously to help them with assistance and everything. You give them a gift card, and they do have these abilities. That was one thing I'd want staff to look at is the geolocating of the gift card, because it is to not just come here, get this program, and then hang out in Norman. It is to locate home. So we'd want those funds. They'd have to be spent outside the city. Now there are ways that you could get around that too. You could always trade these cards off to somebody and they can spend them anywhere, but you can geolocate these gift cards where they don't work in Norman. So as soon as they're on a bus and outside of the city limits, those cards work.
So we would have some sort of agreement with Greyhound or whoever to where the fare is covered, and then we'd be giving them a gift card so they could get food and stuff
Yes.
on the way.
Yes. And and it's, like I said, I don't think this is gonna be, so we're not looking at millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. You could probably do this with, 5-digit money. I don't know how many we're gonna serve, but if we can, think if we relocated 20 people that were sleeping on the streets of Norman, what if 10 of them were successful in that? I mean, isn't that worth trying? I mean, if it's a 50%, there's no gauges on this to see how successful this is. There might be some information in that article that gives you some ideas, but if you had a 50% success rate, if you had a 30% success rate, I mean, if you're having some kind of success out of it, and they're not in a worse position than when you started, wherever they're at, I don't see why we would not pursue. If we're all about helping some people out, why not see if hey, could we get you somewhere?
Are there any other cities in Oklahoma that do that?
I've not done any research on it
Yeah,
yet.
not covered in this article at least. I know that we have some funds that are used with our COC partners to provide transportation back home if they've arrived here and this isn't where their support system is, but I don't have enough details about that. to know how much it is or how many people have actually used it.
Who's doing that?
Jane, I can't see over the chairs.
Jane's here, yeah.
Do you know Jane? I knew Lisa had some information. She's probably over.
Lost your voice again, Jane.
Yeah, Jane,
You're always
poor
losing your
Jane.
voice.
Are you doing lots of karaoke or what?
See you at the deli on Tuesday night.
Just jamming.
Okay.
Oh,
I agree. We probably would not want, anyone from people from Oklahoma City coming down to Norman because they know we have this program. Although, I mean, if we were able to work with Oklahoma City, it could help. If those people are wanting to get home to wherever they're from, it would help Oklahoma City out. It would help Norman out, right? So you
yeah.
think
if
maybe
we-
they might want to. Maybe if we set an example, they would want to join in. I would think there could be some sort of framework where it's someone that's been identified by our continuum of care, or they've been to food and shelter, they've gone through some sort of process and been identified as. So it's not just someone that says, "Well, I was,
I need to get to New York today.
caught a ride
Can you
down
help me
Norman
out?"
this morning. I heard you guys have a program to get out of there."
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Somebody smarter than me that works with this would have to put some insight on that. How to not it just be an abusive program of just people coming through and catching a ride and $400 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, they have them in a system,
Yeah.
especially when we do point in time and then.
So there is kind of a
We're staying
database.
At the warming shelter, but Lisa can probably shed some light on that when she gets here.
So yes, I feel like obviously this is a preliminary conversation about this, but definitely want more information about how other cities are kind of doing their programs, what this looks like. I mean, I think that it is important if there are people here that have, found themselves in Norman, but have support systems outside of Norman and need to get home in some capacity, we should be supportive of getting them to their support structures, because ultimately that's where they're going to be more successful. So I absolutely agree with that. I think layering on this too is yes, where do our COC partners come in? How are we identifying individuals? I think that there could be something with our intake or something along those lines to identify the need for whenever they become known to us within that HMIS system and all of that. I also think that what also layers on this is Griffin, and how people come here and they don't always necessarily have an exit route from Griffin. And so having some kind of structure and some kind of agreement that this isn't letting them off the hook to also provide transportation for people that are coming to Griffin for those services. But how does all of this play together? So I have questions about kind of what this program might look like with kind of all of those intricacies kind of together. And I remember when we were having this conversation that what is Oklahoma City doing? They just allow fare-free busing, or there was something that there is a program that Oklahoma City has. I've
Just inner city.
maybe I don't remember. I'm trying to remember, recall my memory because I wasn't quite sure what this conversation was going to be.
They probably do have that
Today.
since their bus fare isn't free on their public transport.
Yeah, so there's something along the lines of Oklahoma City has an assistance program for busing, and I just don't know if it's relocation or if it's just within their fare system. But I'd be interested to know, kind of what they're doing and how would this layer on partnering with, Oklahoma City or other surrounding areas. Well, so those are my kind of just initial thoughts with the budding conversation. Yeah.
Councilmember Grant.
Did anybody read what Brandy sent?
I didn't
Okay.
get anything.
Cool, that's point one, and then you also spoke to point two, but Lisa's here, so maybe we can talk about that Griffin transportation piece in a second. So she says, I support bus passes for the homeless as transportation was a large gap identified in the home-based study. Although we do not, we do have local nonprofits that give free rides. They can't be everywhere at once. With us looking at putting affordable housing across different areas of our community, the ability for them to have a ride, to make an appointment, etc., will be crucial. So she thought this conversation was probably about that, and I think we can expand on that. But then also, I have heard from the COC partners, whether it was CCFI talking about an elderly couple released from Griffin who showed up on their property, and there was no way for them to do what Norman Caravans does. And it was very disheartening for that agency to see these elderly people walking in the wrong direction of food and shelter. But they didn't have a transportation plan when they were released. And the same thing in a different way happens with like able community-based services, which helps adults with disabilities. If you've ever been in there, it is truly a spectrum between ages, races, and disabilities. And sometimes they get people from across the state, like one was a 17-year-old kid with runaway issues, but he was disabled and he was too much for his family. And then when he runs away from ABLE, it's really hard to track him down, and the cops are like, unless he walks into traffic, we can't really expend the resources to track down this person. And so, yeah, so somewhere in all of this, I'm sure we can come up with ways to make our transportation safer and find people. But also, since Lisa's here, how does that transportation plan work with all these agencies in the COC? Is Griffin, why don't they seem to have a transportation plan? Do you know?
I really can't answer that.
Okay.
A lot of the nonprofits have their own vehicles and provide transportation to the clients they serve. They obviously encourage them to use the bus system. In regards to Griffin, the discharge planning is something that is bigger than us. This is a systemic failure, not just here but everywhere. Same problem for Norman Regional. And we can't dictate how they discharge. It's my understanding that a doctor decides they're going to be discharged and the case manager has like 2 hours to process them and get them out the door. And they leave with what they were wearing when they came on. Same way with the jail. And transportation is the small part of that problem because you got to have some place to go to. And so I know that multiple agencies, like I said, have their own transportation services that they can provide, as well as reach out to a group such as Caravans. CASA, they use volunteers also. When we did a little informal survey a couple of months ago, there was 12 or 14 different agencies that responded with what they do with their transportation, how it's funded, how they developed their system, what their gaps are, what their needs are.
Would a public infrastructure, like if you did passes, would that help alleviate some of this a little bit? I mean, not in the case of community or ABLE, because for them, they do have, like you were saying, they have their own transportation, but it always comes down to staff, and they don't have capacity to pull somebody off before to go look for someone. But yeah.
Now, I do know that that multiple agencies receive different kinds of funding to where they can use a third party, such as Greyhound. I guess they're still called Greyhound, to buy a ticket to take someone to a place that they desire to go to. And then that's just embedded in different grants that they get, as well as discretionary funds, or being able to access Traveler's Aid or something like that.
What's Traveler's Aid like?
It's a nationwide funding source for transportation, and I think it started way back when people would get stranded in different places due to car trouble or all their money being stolen or things like that. But different agencies used to access it through United Way. I'm not sure how it's accessed now. Maybe rentals.
Well, I'd say, not to jump on that, but we're kind of mixing and matching with what this one is here. That is, and those are kind of a little bit separate topics, but somewhat similar. They overlap a little bit, but I was gonna ask you, because we were talking before you got in here, and sorry if you didn't know about the time of the change, but what was it? The continuum of care, there's already somewhere in the continuum of care that does supply relocation assistance.
It's not, there are continuum of care agencies that receive primarily emergency solutions grants, which is a form of funding, and that is one of the eligible expenses is transportation.
So would we have somebody in this, if we were gonna do this program, that could probably execute it if we funded them? That they know the city's not taking on.
Well, there's
Execution of
numerous
this.
agencies that could do this. I mean, they work with addressing transportation issues all the time. With the COC funding, the funding from the emergency solutions grants, the stipulation with that is if, say, for instance, you have family in Pittsburgh and you want to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Well, the funding can allow the purchase of a bus ticket to get you to Pittsburgh, but it is required that they confirm who you're going to and that they are going to accept you.
That's exactly like what I'm thinking about with this. So if we already have somebody set up to do that, and we were just able to expand and say, hey, we want you to rock and roll with this, and here's, because I don't know what the funding's
That
like.
funding already exists.
It does?
I'm not for sure how many people take advantage of it.
I mean, but yeah, is it a program that's widely pushed or?
No, it's on a case-by-case basis as they're evaluating the client's needs and what their desires are. And so if the client indicates that, I really don't want to be in Norman anymore, I really want to go to Pittsburgh where my family is, then they will work to get that person to Pittsburgh. If the family says, or it doesn't have to be family, whoever they're going to says yes, we will accept him when he gets here and help him get stabilized.
So is there one group in particular that is doing that?
Well, I mean, Food and Shelter, Thunderbird Clubhouse, Salvation Army, CCFI, Department of Mental Health, they all have that as part of their program.
Go ahead.
Maybe we could reach out to them and see if any of them, they need some city help with this. If we contributed a little bit more funding, would that help them?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I don't want to recreate if somebody's already,
Right.
I didn't know that
but if we can help
if it
supplement
exists
what's already out
or
there.
how widespread it is, or if
Yeah.
it's known or what. I mean, I would like some input on that.
So I'd be interested too, because I'm thinking of a scenario where someone doesn't have family or anybody, but they say, "Well, I'm from Pittsburgh," as Lisa was saying. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. I don't have any family that's alive anymore there, but it's a place I'm familiar with because where I grew up, I'd like to get back there. So thinking of that scenario where there wouldn't be anybody to confirm, I guess. Would we confirm maybe with their social services to say, this guy, we have a person who's from
No.
there, he wants to come back home, he doesn't have any family or anybody to vouch for him. But, so I'd want to think about that too, because I could definitely see
Having
that.
some connection on the other end when they get there.
Yeah, because they just, may not have an actual person that they
that's
know.
not the. I don't want people to think that the point of this is just. I'm saying there is a way for our homeless community if you really wanted to be draconian about it, like
Yeah.
load up, get on this bus, and but that's not this. This is just I know that there, after reading and looking up on this, there were quite a few people that said, hey, I just didn't have a way out of here,
Well, I could see.
so I just kind of settled
Yeah.
and this was it.
If I were older and I found myself in that situation in a different part of the country, and I could see myself saying, "Hey, how can I get back to Norman? At least that's where I'm from and where I grew up. Even if I didn't have any family left here or anybody, it would just be the familiar place I'd probably want to get back to." So yeah, I could see that there being quite a few people that might feel that way. They're just, I just need a way to get back to where I'm from because I feel more comfortable there.
So I guess what exactly is already being done in the community and how we could,
Yeah.
if it even needs enhancement or how we could.
It'd probably be hard too to prevent anybody from coming back, because could see someone being in a situation where they might get involuntarily brought back to Norman. Say they're from Tulsa, we send them back to Tulsa, or something ends up and they get brought to Griffin for something, and then they're back in the same, they'd be back in Norman again.
Yeah.
And so, might be hard to say there's
Well,
no.
you can make exceptions
Yeah.
for that if it was like involuntarily brought to Griffin and now I don't have a ride back.
That's it's definitely like Griffin, Norman Regional, and the county jail are definitely three places where people could end up
And
in our
you can work
community.
it maybe where it's targeted at that.
Well, because you could definitely get a lot of people ending up in Norman that aren't from Norman because they ended up at one of those three facilities. Like you get arrested in South Oklahoma City, you're going to be brought to Cleveland County Jail, not Oklahoma County Jail. So you might live in the city, close to downtown or on the south side, north of I-40. But if you're south of I-40 and you get arrested, you might get taken to Cleveland County. And then when you get let out of Cleveland County Jail, you're kind of stranded out in the middle of nowhere up there. So it's easier to probably walk down to Norman than it is to try to walk back to OKC. I don't know. So, and then Norman Regional, you could definitely see people that might end up being brought to the hospital here, but they're from who knows where else. And same thing with Griffin for sure. So yeah, I think those are three areas we might want to look at how are folks being brought here, and
Maybe we could
are they getting stranded?
coordinate a transportation plan with all these facilities.
Yeah, or help
Or some kind of
help supplement funding to existing programs if they need to expand them or make them more prominent, whatever it may be to help. Yeah.
I just want to echo the county jail part. I actually have received like a lengthy email from a constituent who was concerned with the foot traffic on Flood and felt it was very dangerous overall.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's no sidewalk either over there. Okay.
What else do y'all need as staff to take that, what is a concept, and
This is good.
Yeah, we can just do some more research.
any other questions? Input?
Want to bring it back to here or?
Yeah, I'm sure it needs to come back through here. I mean, it's at the very
Yeah.
concept idea stage, see what exists or whatnot.
Alright.
No other questions or anything, this meeting's adjourned.
All right.
Thank y'all.